How did Democrats pull off a 3-point win in the Virginia redistricting referendum, and what does it tell us about the 2026 midterms? There's a lot to unpack here, so let's go through all the issues. First, let's clear up one of the biggest misconceptions I've been seeing online, especially from right wing creators, and it's that the relatively small 3-point win by Democrats in this referendum is going to translate into poorer midterm election results. You can't really draw a direct line between a referendum performance and midterm and general election performance for political parties. For instance, in 2020, Oklahoma narrowly passed Medicaid expansion in a referendum. Did that mean that Oklahoma was competitive for Democrats? Of course not. And since gerrymandering is pretty politically unpopular, especially amongst independent voters, it's no surprise that this referendum would underperform generic Democrat in the state of Virginia. And you can see behind me that the results pretty much track the 2024 election results with some very important caveats, which I will now cover. And like in every election, there are two forces here that can explain why the results are different than previous elections, and they can be very hard to untangle. One is turnout differential. Were Republicans just more likely to turn out than Democrats to actually go vote? And the other is persuasion factor. Did people actually, let's say, change their vote from Donald Trump to voting yes in this referendum, or from Abigail Spanberger to voting no on this referendum? And what this very complicated graph behind me is attempting to look at is the turnout part of that equation. And this graph shows that this electorate was more Republican than the 2021, 2024, or 2025 election. The pink line is comparing this to the 2024 election, and it arranges all of the counties from most Kamala Harris on the left to most Donald Trump on the right, with a relative turnout being on the y axis. And because it's sloping upward, it basically says the more Donald Trump the county, the more turnout we had in this 2026 referendum. Since this referendum was a lot more motivating for Republican voters to go to the polls, how did the Yes campaign still manage to win? And I think that's where we're seeing some more persuasion impacts coming into play versus 2024. And the biggest area we saw shifts in was with non-white voters, particularly Asian and Latino voters in Northern Virginia. So Manassas Park and Vietnamese and Asian areas of Northern Virginia had the biggest shifts versus 2024, and that's where I think we're seeing this long-standing impact on Trump immigration policies on voters' behavior, turning them away very sharply from the GOP, which is one of the biggest warning signs I see for Republicans in 2026. And the last thing I think is super interesting here is, what does this race say about the incompetence and mismanagement of the Republican electoral machine? Because they didn't get into this race till the very end. So they're the red line here in terms of spending, and they allowed the Yes campaign to basically be on the airwaves for a few months without any competition. So the Yes campaign could really define the issue set here. So I don't know why the No campaign didn't think this race would be competitive. They clearly were looking at maybe bad polling. So what does this say about the incompetence of the Republican campaign infrastructure going to 2026? I think that's pretty scary for them.